Hi everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to cook up 3 types of sausages. They had this like Oktoberfest pack at Costco. So we're gonna cook up some sausages. We're gonna make some homemade pretzels. We're gonna make a hot German potato salad, some beer cheese, and then some bacon and Brussels sprouts. Would have been cabbage, but I don't have cabbage, so Brussels sprouts is like a little baby cabbage. So let's start by getting our bacon prepped and ready for both our hot German potato salad as well as our Brussels sprouts and bacon. So I've got, this is not quite a pound, this is 12 ounces. So we're gonna put some in our, over here for our potatoes, and then we'll have some with our Brussels sprouts. I'm just gonna use my kitchen shears, and we're going to just snip these guys up into nice little bits so that they'll saute up lovely. There we go. And because then we're gonna fry our potatoes up in this bacon grease, which will add lovely flavors. And the same thing, we're gonna fry up our little Brussels sprout leaves in bacon grease as well. So bacon is what makes it. And I have my dough proofing in the oven right now for our pretzels. And I'm gonna today, like sometimes I do my like little pretzel twist or whatnot, but I'm actually gonna make a couple really big pretzels today. When we were in Anakista in Gatlinburg over the weekend, they had this Bavarian festival, and they had these giant German pretzels. And I was like, they were so delicious. It wasn't a beer cheese, but it was like this fall festival cheese, which was delicious. So I was like, oh, I can make that. We're gonna do that. You know, my pretzels will be a little bit different. They're gonna be more like the American pretzels with, you know, the soft, like Annie Ann's pretzels, versus the German ones that have that darker crust, because I'm not going to be using lye for my pretzels. But let's get this bacon cut up. It is not wanting to cut for me today. You know what? Let's switch scissors. I'm gonna use a different set of scissors and they'll cut a little bit better. When in doubt, just get out your good old non-kitchen shear scissors. Look at this. Just cut so much faster. And then we can get on to rolling out our pretzels once we get this cooking up. But I don't know, this weekend we had so much fun, and I was kind of like, we should have a little Oktoberfest dinner at home. And that's what we're doing today. Okay, I'll need my hands washed.
Someone posted that they'd lose a fingertip doing that, and it's like, well, you have lost a few fingertips.
I have. I should say I am a little accident kind of crazy in the kitchen. You know, but I haven't had an accident in a long time, so. But when I was younger and learning how to cook in high school, I did end up getting stitches a couple of times. But you know, you grow with age, you get a little wiser, you learn to cut away from yourself, and you know, you learn to survive. Okay, we've got our bacon both heating up. I've got my top and bottom ones cooking. Now we are going to prep up our pretzels to bake in the oven. So let me turn this guy off and get my pretzel dough that I have proofing in my nice warm oven. This is just a basic yeast dough. It's not a sourdough. I've been told by my son that I have been never allowed to change this recipe, so because he loves it. But it's a really simple, easy recipe for it. I actually believe I have this recipe card available for everybody. I gave it out in the spring, so you'll have to do some digging for it, but for our kind of yeast pretzel here. I'm going to do, I think I'm going to try to cut this into 9 big pretzels, which now I've got to realize I've got to cut equal halves into a 9, which doesn't work. So maybe we'll do 8 big pretzels for this. There we go. Realize my fraction counting was off. So the nice thing about this recipe is you can make them bigger or smaller, and you just have to adjust the cooking time by just a little bit for it. And now, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm just gonna cut a little bit. I'm gonna make my 9, because 9's gonna lay better on my baking sheet. So we're just gonna cut off a little bit from every single one. This will be my Frankenstein pretzel. That should work. Okay, let's get these rolled out. I'm gonna do my traditional pretzel shape for this, because you gotta have your nice big pretzel. So with the trick with rolling out the pretzels, and they're not hard, you gotta roll them nice and long. So about between 18 inches and 2 feet for this. To really, look, don't roll it so hard that you roll it apart. Again, this is my Frankenstein pretzel. Here we go. And then, let's see. And now these are going to get a lot bigger when they bake up and get nice and poofy. But we're gonna set this out here. I'm gonna just move it right here. Always running out of space. And we're gonna get our first one on our baking sheet and to kind of puff up and rise. And now they look small, but they're going to get a lot bigger with it as they poof up. And when we boil them, they almost double in size. And there, my husband's like, these don't look very big. And I said, that's my Frankenstein one. He's not gonna be as comparable to my other ones. Okay, so see, this guy's already rolling out. There we go. And see, they're getting bigger and bigger with each one. While that one's on there, I'm going to give my bacon a little bit of a stir up and start breaking it apart. I'm going to turn these pans both down to about a medium, around a 5 to cook up. I always like them to heat up at high, and then I turn them down a little bit lower. And then, once I get these kind of rolled out, we will throw some baking soda into our water, and then we'll boil off our pretzels for just, you know, a minute or so, a little like 20 seconds on each side for it. And then we're gonna make our hot German potato salad and some Brussels sprouts and bacon and some beer cheese. So just a kind of a simple but delicious dinner. Here we go. And my husband's like, these are small. And I was like, they're not small, they're getting bigger. Maybe I should have just made 6 really big ones. They're not so much different. Normally I'll do 15 pretzels, and somehow the 15 look this size too. But I think it's just because he can't compare them to the little ones.
You have a question? What does baking soda in the water do?
It gives you a, like, the finish on your pretzel. So you know when you boil off bagels and whatnot, you get that chewy skin? The baking soda gives it pretzels that kind of unique flavor taste to it, as well as that kind of harder, not super hard crust, but a little bit of a chewier, crunchier crust. Not as crunchy as lye gives you for it. So it's kind of the crucial part for the pretzel part. Here we go. This one's got a double twist in it.
So you have a question, is this like an Oktoberfest?
Yeah, it is kind of like an Oktoberfest. That's kind of what Maya's going for, you know. There was lots of Oktoberfest themed things in the Smoky Mountains this weekend, which made me really want to get into the Oktoberfest, you know, kind of fun part for it. You know, so my family lives, although they're not from Germany, but all of my aunts and uncles and my grandmother all live in Germany. And when I was in high school, I did a foreign exchange in Germany. So I have lots of connections to Germany and can speak a little bit of the language. My grammar is awful, but I can at least converse somewhat. So I always like to do it. I have, when I celebrate at Christmas time, we kind of have a hodgepodge of Swedish and German traditions. And I have like little German decorations, like my little smoking Viking here, which is actually a Swedish Viking, but it's a German wooden thing. So you got to just kind of marry the cultures together. Okay, while I'm rolling out these last ones, I'm going to turn my water up nice and high, and you're going to put in about 1/4 cup of baking soda into your water. Here we go. And this is, again, going to be crucial for giving you the right kind of crust on your pretzel on there.
You have a question? How are the Smokies?
It was so much fun. It was wonderful. The weather was perfect. The camping was nice. There was no signal or Wi-Fi out there, which kind of let us really disconnect from, you know, the world, and it was lovely. We had so much fun. We saw 3 bears, so that was, of course, really exciting because Teddy, it was so funny. So we went to Anakeesta, which is this like outdoor adventure park where you go in Gatlinburg and then you take this little like gondola up the mountain. And we were up there and they had high ropes course and all these little outdoor activities, mountain coasters and zip lining. And Teddy was like, I really want to see a bear. I want to see a bear. And I said, I don't know if we'll see one. And we were lucky when we were doing these little outdoor high ropes kind of bridge. As we were going there, I saw this bear crossing the street down below us. Like there was a little winding road between where these like things, and he was going through the woods and came out. And then we saw 2 more bears that I think were trying to, they could smell the food from like the restaurants. And so they were coming in and you could see them. It was really interesting. One of the bears had tags on its ear, so I feel like he's been enjoyed the city food a couple of times and has been caught and re-released. But it was really cool to see them. That's only the second time that I've seen bears in the Smoky. The first time was like, I want to say what, 11 or 12 years ago. We went out to Cades Cove, which is this really scenic route out in the Smokies. And we went on this old road, which is now completely closed, called Parsons Branch Road, which wasn't a road. It's completely washed away. And there's signs that was like, we cannot help you if you get stuck out here. It's like $10,000 to rescue you. We went on it anyways, and we had a mama bear and 2 cubs cross right in front of our car when we did that. So it was really, really cool. But those were the only 2 times that I had seen bears. Okay, I've got my water almost to a nice boil here. My bacon, we're getting pretty good here. I'm gonna drop in a little bit of butter into my pan because normally if I had a full pack of bacon in here, I'd have enough grease to kind of fry it up, but since I don't, I need a little bit of butter to make it there, to crisp it up, and we're gonna fry our potatoes in this like hybrid. So a lot of times a German potato salad, you're gonna boil the potatoes for a hot one. I'm gonna do mine just slightly different. I'm gonna fry my potatoes up, and then I'm going to make a kind of a little bit of a vinegar dressing that goes on it. So instead of it being boiled then kind of fried and tossed in the grease, I'm gonna just fry it from the beginning. So I think it will give it a nicer texture. So it won't be as mushy, but you'll have some crispy edges, but you'll still get that tanginess. So it's a little bit different, but in the same flavor profile. And I love doing that. That's one of those things while we were at both Dollywood and Anakeesta, I took pictures of some of the food that we ate at the festival, and I tried to memorize what they taste like, and I'm gonna recreate some of the dishes that we have there. There was this one dish that we had which was amazing. It was like a braised pork belly on a flatbread with a slaw and this lovely herby like pesto. And everybody loved it. Teddy, Torrin, and Evie, they all loved it. They thought it was amazing. So I'm going to try to recreate that dish, as well as we had this German sausage dish as well, which I'm kind of making a somewhat of it for it. But I've got to try and do all these things for it. It's one of my favorite things is when I find something I like at a restaurant, I love trying to recreate it. Okay, so right now we're gonna be using some baby gold potatoes, and I'm just kind of cutting them into nice smaller pieces so that they will fry up nice and kind of crisp up well in our pan. I don't want them too big or they'll never get soft. And once my water has a good boil over there, which is pretty close, and again, we added our 1/4 cup of baking soda in there, I'm gonna start dipping my pretzels in. And we'll let them boil for, 20 to 30 seconds on each side, and then we'll take them off, and then we won't bake them yet. I want to bake them closer to the thing, but they only take about 8 to 9 minutes at 450 to bake up. Since these are bigger, they're going to take probably closer to 9 minutes. When you're a little bit bigger, they take a little longer. Okay, we've got our bacon here. With a pretty good kind of crispiness here. I want it to get almost completely crispy, but not all the way, because I'm gonna keep it in versus taking it out and then adding it back in. So it will continue to kind of crisp up and add that flavor in, but I don't need it to be super crispy. Let's get our potatoes in here. And then we're gonna toss them with our bacon grease, and we're gonna let them saute up a little bit for this. So I'm going to coat them up. And there we go. And then I'm going to spread them out, and I'm going to actually put a lid over them. That's going to help them get a little bit tender while also getting crispy at the same time. And I'm going to cook this over about a medium heat. Let me grab my lid out from here. I'll say that's one thing I do like about the Hex Clad is they all come with lids that have a little hole that allows steam to collect, but it also allows you to visually look at your dish while you're cooking it. Okay, let me get my slotted spoon out. This is where it makes it easier for kind of boiling off these pretzels. And then I'm just gonna drop in. I try to do, let's see. Since these are bigger, I can only do about 2 at a time because you don't want them to touch each other when we do it. And we're gonna boil them for about 20 to 30 seconds, and then we'll pop them, like give them a dab. They'll flip over because they're very buoyant, and we'll boil them on the other side because you wanna get that boil on both sides to give that really nice chewy texture to it. And then, while we're waiting for these kind of to boil, we can start shredding up some of our cheese. But this is kind of what I'm talking about when you just poke it, just like this. And you gotta flip it over. We'll let it boil again. And we are going to be making a lovely kind of beer cheese dip for our pretzels to dip it in, which will be delicious. So we're gonna use a little bit of Gouda and some sharp cheddar cheese. And so I'll grate off. Now, when you're making a cheese dip, you always want to shred your own cheese versus using pre-shredded cheese. Pre-shredded cheese has an anti-caking agent on it, which prevents it from melting and sticking together, which in theory is great. But the problem with that is it leaves a grainy texture when you are melting it, which is why I like if you make homemade macaroni and cheese, and you get a little bit of a grainy texture, that's what it's from. I'm going to cut off a block of this Gouda. Here we go. Pull the wax off. I need about a 1/2 cup of Gouda, and we're going to use about a cup of cheddar for this. Let's give these guys a little bit of a pop. Now, you don't have to worry, like it's not 30 seconds exactly, 20-30 seconds, just in the ballpark. The longer you boil them, the chewier of a skin that you'll have on your pretzel. So if you look away, forget about it for like 2 minutes, it's not ruined. You're just gonna have a chewier skin.
You have a question. Is that just boiling water?
It is water with about a 1/4 cup of baking soda in it. So not just plain water. And that baking soda helps that kind of pretzel texture develop, that chewier, slightly crunchier skin on it. As well as gives you that little bit of that pretzel taste to it. Now, traditionally, pretzels are cooked in a lye mixture, so water and lye. But I don't work with lye. Lye is very caustic, And so I just stick with the good old baking soda. It doesn't give me that good crunch like lye does, but everybody likes this recipe, so I'm happy with it.
You know, question, and the recipe is posted?
I do have this one posted. I believe I put it out in the spring, so you'll have to look for it for everybody. You'll have to kind of dig through the post as well as, I'm baking it up. It's pretty easy, but it's out there. And it is definitely a favorite. Everyone I've made these for have absolutely loved them. So let's get these Gouda grated up. Let me give this a quick pop over. Boop. And boop. And when you boil them, as you can see, they actually get a little bit bigger in size. And then when we bake them in the oven, they're gonna get even bigger in size. So they do poop up a good amount. I always say they double in size from this. And this dough has been proofing for about an hour to an hour and a half. So it's a yeast-based dough, so it does take it needs its resting time to do it. And then you kind of mix it down, roll it out, and that lets out some of those like natural gases from the yeast in there. Okay. Let's get these right there. And we'll have just one more, but I'm going to give my bacon over here for my Brussels sprouts a little bit of a toss. This is a smaller burner back here, so it's going to take a little bit longer to cook up, which is fine because Brussels sprouts, once they get in there, they don't need as long to cook. There we go. Now I'm using regular Gouda cheese, but you can use smoked Gouda. I'm going to be adding a little bit of liquid smoke to get that, but smoked Gouda will give you that as well. There we go. Let's give these guys a little pop. Beautiful. So I've got my Gouda, and then we'll do our cheddar cheese. And this will be for our cheese dip that we're going to make. And again, you want to use freshly grated cheese because it doesn't have that anti-caking agent on it. Get these guys out. And the slotted spoon is important so you don't carry a lot of this extra water over to your pan. It allows it to, drain out. So for the cheese, for our cheese dip, we need about half a cup of Gouda to 1.5 cups of cheddar cheese, depending on quite how much you want to make. We're going to make a lovely roux as the base of it using butter and flour. And then we're going to use some paprika, onion powder, garlic, salt, and a little bit of mustard and Worcestershire sauce as our seasoning for it, as well as some German beer. Here we go. Looks like we're getting pretty close there. I don't know if I need any more than this. Let's flip this guy over. Beautiful. In just about 30 more seconds on there, and then we'll take him out. That looks good. So I've got my cheese for my cheese dip. And looking good. So as you can see, they are much bigger from when I first kind of shaped them out on there. Now I don't spend the time to make perfectly shaped pretzels. I remember the first time I made these several years ago, I spent the time to do it, and it took me like 2 hours to make the pretzels. And I was like, yeah, who has time for this? Okay, we've got that right there. Let me flip our potatoes that we kind of have cooking. So again, we have them cooking in our bacon grease with a little bit of butter added. And we're using that lid to help steam them up, which is going to make them a little bit more tender for this. And at the end, we'll season them up. We're going to make a lovely kind of a sweet vinaigrette dressing for this, which will be lovely. Did I get a little over? Yeah. Here we go. Beautiful. And then let me get this stirred up here. Let's spread this out. Now the trick with your potatoes to get crispy potatoes or whatnot is You do your flipping once, let them sit, let them cook. Okay. Before we get our pretzels, we need to give them a little bit of an egg, a brush of some egg wash. So I'm gonna use 1 egg, a little bit of water, and then we're gonna brush this over our pretzel, which is going to give us this nice darker brown color and shine, similar to what you put on a brioche bread.
You got a couple comments tonight that you remind them of Rachel Ray.
She was one of my favorites back in the day. I used to love watching her show. It was also one of those things when you were sick at school, her show would come on during the day if you were sick from school. That and The Price is Right, and some really weird shows. But I loved her. I thought she was just like fun, nice, real. She was more about making good food than the presentation and making everything beautiful, and that's what I'm about. I don't, of course I always wanted to look nice, but for me I could care less about what it looks like as long as it tastes good. I know a lot of places it's so much about the presentation and all of that, but for me, if my kids are enjoyed it and are happy at the end of the day, that's what matters. Here we go. And we're gonna kind of coat it up with our egg mixture. You wanna make sure you get it all over, because if you miss a spot, your your pretzel won't be shiny and brown in that spot. So just kind of coat it up. It's just, again, 1 egg mixed with about a teaspoon, teaspoon and a half of water. And we're not gonna use all of this egg mixture, but can't crack half an egg. Here we go. And we're gonna brush this guy. And then I'll put these in the oven in just a second. These are only gonna take between 8 and 9 minutes at 450 to cook up. You cook them at pretty high heat and pretty fast. And that's what keeps them nice and soft inside, like the pretzels that you get from, the mall, those little kiosks in the mall. Okay. Let's give our bacon a little bit of a stir here. And let's get our roux going on our back burner for our beer cheese. I need my butter. We're gonna put in, I need about, I wanna say like 3 tablespoons of butter for this. I'm gonna turn on my back one, nice and low. And let's get a whisk here. And we're gonna melt our butter. And once it's melted, we're gonna add in our flour, and we're gonna make a nice little roux, which is essentially the base for gravies or gumbos or whatnot. But it's kind of, it's butter and flour that you cook over heat, and then you add your liquid in, and it's a thickener for it. So let that butter come to a nice melt there. But while we're waiting, let's prep up our Brussels sprouts to throw in with our bacon. So traditionally with German you'd have some, braised cabbage, but I don't have any cabbage today, and Brussels sprout is like practically a cabbage. So we're gonna just cut off the little stump at the bottom, and then I like to quarter them. When you quarter them, it allows the leaves to kind of fall apart, and it allows you to season up that inner part of that Brussels sprout, which tends to be a bit more bitter. So cut it apart like this, you'll get nice little flavoring in here. And I don't know if I'm going to use up all of these Brussels sprouts, but I've got them out in case I do. And then we'll start cooking up our sausages here.
You have a question. To make a roux, do you have to use flour?
Yes, you have to use flour, and I've never done it with a gluten-free flour, so I'm not sure how it would work in there, but yes, that's the thickener base for it. Now there's different methods you can do. That you could use cornstarch with the water at a separate time, but it's not kind of the base of a roux to make it for it. If you needed to do a gluten-free one, you're going to kind of actually make a slurry instead, which is mixing cornstarch with like a liquid and then adding it to your fat and meat to thicken it up. But for a roux, you need to use flour. Okay, let's see how everything. Got our bacon. We'll be ready for these in just a second. Brussels sprouts and bacon are just one of my favorite ways to eat Brussels sprouts. I feel like it's kind of like that was the first kind of when Brussels sprouts got like big and bougie a couple years. That was kind of how they were done, and now you can get them done so many other ways. But it's still my favorite. And this is a vegetable my husband will eat, so you know it's a plus. He loves this, which is so funny because there's so many other things that I'm like, you like Brussels sprouts and bacon, but you don't like this. He's an odd duck, guys. Okay. And we're good there. Let's check on our butter over here real quick. It's almost about melted here. Beautiful. You just want to make sure it's completely melted before you add in your flour, so that it will thicken up nicely. Okay, and then we're going to add in about 1/4 cup of flour, but before we do that, let's get our potatoes here. Grab my spatula. We're going to flip them over on here. And again, we want them to get crispy but tender at the same time, which is why I'm kind of cooking them on this lid. But it takes out the step of having to boil them, and then kind of do the toss for our German potato salad. Okay, for our base of our roux, we're going to add in about 1/4 cup of flour, and just good old all-purpose. There we go. It's a little bit more than I need. And you're just going to mix it in here with your whisk. I'm going to turn my heat down to low now. And you just kind of make a paste here. And this is called a roux. So this is all you need to do to make a roux. Now the difference between like a blonde roux and then what you use for a gumbo is the longer you cook it, the roux will turn darker brown and more rich in color and give you a nuttier, more depth of flavor.
You have 2 questions. How much butter and what temperature setting for the roux?
So right now I'm cooking it over about a 2, but I am using a Dutch oven, so it's going to keep that heat a little bit longer. So a medium to medium low for it, because you don't want to scorch it. And I used about 3 tablespoons of butter with just shy of 1/4 cup of flour. We're going to let this cook in here. Beautiful. And then we're going to add in our cream and our beer. Or not cream, but half and half. You can use whole milk as well for this. For the cheese dip, I prefer the like half and half. I think it makes it a little bit richer. We're going to start with about 1 cup of half and half. And then I also have my beer that we're going to mix in here because it is a beer cheese. And of course I had to get a German beer because if you're making German pretzels, we're going to add in a little bit at a time. You don't want to just flood it in there, otherwise you can curdle it. So it's going to come out pretty thick on there. So I'm going to put a little bit of my mixture in here, and we're going to kind of mix it in there nice and slow. And you want it to be, you know, thicker because you're going to add our cheese into it, but you got to think about a nice cheese dip. It's not runny or thin. There we go. Add in a little bit more. I realize I'm dripping it a little everywhere, but that's a-okay. So we've got our cup in there, and it's nice and thickened up. The more you add the heat into it, the thicker it's going to get. That's kind of the beauty of it. And now we're going to need about 1/2 cup of beer. Here we go. Can't tell. The foam is everywhere. That's 1/3. There we go. And I find for this, a lighter beer tends to work a little bit better. Darker ones give you more of that richer, you know, stronger flavor to it. But this is going to be for our beer cheese. And we're going to mix it in nice and slow. And while you're whisking, you need to whisk continuously for this. In here. And this, as we're heating it, it's going to cook out the alcohol in it and just leave that nice little aftertaste for it. Here we go. Beautiful. As you can see, we've got this nice kind of creamy mixture. When we add our cheese in here, it will continue to thicken up, as well as when we add, as it continues to cook and kind of cook off that extra liquid. Here we go. Beautiful. So we're gonna let that simmer here for just a second. And then, let me wipe up my mess that I made, because I'm good at making messes. Let's go pop our pretzels in the oven here. My oven is preheated to 450 degrees. I do not salt my pretzels before I pop it in. I do it after, because I will rub it with a little bit of butter and kind of sprinkle it on there. 450, pop it in here. And then I'm going to set my timer. I'm gonna do for 8 minutes and 20 seconds. And that way I have a little bit of time to get over here. When you make them smaller, they need a little less time. When you make them bigger, they need a bit more time. Okay. Beautiful. Let that kind of warm up. I'm going to trim up my last little bits of these, throw them in, and we can have them start cooking up in the bacon grease. Let's get our first little batch in here. Let's see how many more I need. Beautiful. I think I'll just put in like a few more and get these guys going. I'm not going to need all of them. I'll maybe use some in a soup someday this week. If you've never had Brussels sprouts in a soup, they actually work wonderful. They work like little cabbages almost. You know, I quarter them up and I throw them in there. So I think I'll save this little batch for a soup. Okay, let's get these kind of coated in our bacon grease. And then we're gonna let them kind of cook up with that crispy bacon in there, which will give them so much great flavor. Beautiful. Okay. Let me grab my pan over here for our sausages. We're going to put my last little butter in here because we are going to cook up our sausages. I'm going to first saute up some onions with it, and then we'll throw our sausages in so they have this nice little onion flavor with them. And then we'll finish off our potato salad here. We'll add some diced up red onion and green onion, and we'll make a lovely tangy vinaigrette for our hot German potato salad. So lots of great flavors that are going to come together for a nice little German fest meal. Okay, for my onions, I'm going to do long and stringy to go with them because the sausages are long. And I always like to kind of cook my onions with how they're going to be eaten. Yeah, I was deciding whether to do big like German pretzels or do pretzel buns to do the little sausages in them, but I decided this way.
You have a question? Why not put a lid over the Brussels sprouts?
I don't like my Brussels sprouts to get soggy or mushy, and when you trap that steam in there, you tend to get a more damp environment, which won't leave your Brussels sprouts crispy. So for the potatoes, I want them steamed and softer, as if I had boiled them. So I'm keeping the lid on, but for the Brussels sprouts, I don't like that. So just kind of different methods to give different end results. I've got my potatoes in here with my butter. I'm going to turn my down to about a 4.
Those are onions.
On my onions in here. Just looking at those potatoes. Okay, here is our beautiful kind of our roux base. I'm going to add in my last little bit of my beer in there, and then we're going to start adding in our spices and then some of our cheeses. So we're going to put in about a teaspoon of Worcestershire. This is going to give a nice little tangy bit to it. It's just an overall great flavor. We're going to use a little bit of liquid smoke, which will give it a nice kind of smoky flavor. If you're going to use smoked Gouda, you don't need to use this. I'm using like a 1/4 of a teaspoon. You don't need a lot of liquid smoke to get that flavor, and it's overpowerful if you put too much in there, so be careful with it. We're going to use about a teaspoon of mustard, a nice Dijon mustard. If you have a nice seedy German mustard, great. If not, don't worry about it. Just grab my other spices over here. Let me grab my tongs. Let's get these onions a little stir. Beautiful. Kind of break them apart, cook them in that butter. This is going to add a lot of flavor to the sausages, especially since we're just doing a pan fry on them. It smells so good. Garlic salt, you want about a teaspoon of garlic salt in here. You don't need too much because remember the cheese is going to give you a nice bit of saltiness. So about a teaspoon of garlic salt. We're going to do a teaspoon of onion powder. And then about a teaspoon of smoked paprika. Pretty simple. But look, it's already going to give it a nice kind of color, but you can already see how thick it is before we've even added in our cheese. And that's just from our lovely, half and half and our flour roux mixture. We're going to add our cheese in stages. You don't want to just chunk it all in at one time because that's going to bring the temperature of your dip down and can cause your cheese to kind of curdle and not get as smooth.
You have a question? Can you go over the seasonings one more time for that?
Yes. So we added in a teaspoon of garlic salt, a teaspoon of onion powder, a teaspoon of Worcestershire, a teaspoon of mustard, and a teaspoon of paprika, or smoked paprika. So pretty simple thing, nice seasoning overall. There's going to be more saltiness from the cheeses as well. And then we used about a half a cup of beer. I chose a light beer. And then a cup of half and half with 3 tablespoons of butter and about a 1/4 cup of flour. Beautiful. So we can see it's starting to melt. I like doing this in a Dutch oven versus a metal sauce pot because I find a metal sauce pot can scald your cheese at the bottom. And so the Dutch oven keeps a nice lower but even heat, especially after you've made it, keeping it nice and melted without it scalding.
And liquid smoke?
Oh yes, and a 1/4 teaspoon of liquid smoke. So because I'm using regular Gouda cheese, I am using liquid smoke, but if you use smoked Gouda, you don't need to add in the liquid smoke. But I always have Gouda on hand. I rarely ever have smoked Gouda, but you can easily make that flavor. Let's add in a little bit more. But you can see just how, just dropped a little bit of cheese in there, but just how nice and thick and gooey and delicious this cheese dip is going to be. Beautiful. We'll let that sit there for a second. Let's get our potatoes here. You can see we're starting to get these nice, beautiful, crispy edges on our potatoes. Beautiful. Okay. Perfect. Oops, lost a bit. And let's get our onions here. I'm just waiting for them to get a nice little kind of golden brown color on it, a nice barely, and then we're going to throw our sausages in here. And I've got 3 types of sausages. There we go. Let's work on, let's see. We're gonna dress these at the very end, but let's get our sausages here. So this is like a little kind of collection pack from Costco. It has a bratwurst, a weisswurst, and a knackwurst, which are all delicious sausages. It's better sometimes, I go to Europe or Germany with my mom, and we've been to their Weihnachtsmarkt there, which is like a Christmas market. And my mom would always get like Blutwurst, which is blood sausage, and she loves it. I do not care for it. But these are all good kind of plain ones. We're gonna go grab our pretzels out of the oven here in just a second. Let's give this a quick toss, and we'll pull them out in here. Let me give this a good stir first. Beautiful. And let's go grab these pretzels. this off. Oh, look how beautiful they look. They're nice and got a good golden brown color to them. Are gorgeous. And these are, again, nice, soft pretzels with a little bit of a, you know, a chewier skin, but they're not the traditional German ones with the crunch because I use baking soda instead of lye. There we go. But these are gorgeous. I told you they poop up a lot, which will make them delicious with our dinner for it. To get the true, really pretty, where they're not touching, you have to roll your pretzel thing out like 3 feet long, which is just crazy and takes too much work. So mine are kind of fat, stubby ones. Okay, let's get these sausages frying up. These are already pre-cooked, so I'm really just toasting them up for this. So I'm guessing that one, which they told, that one's probably the knock first on here. It's gonna be interesting to try to guess which each one is after we have them cooked up. There we go. And then we'll throw our last one in. But I was excited for these because I always love a good, fun, you know, sausage for that. Wash my hands. Okay, let's give these guys a quick toss. The cooking them with the onions is going to give them a nice flavor to the skin as well. You could definitely grill these up on the grill as well. Okay. Let's add in our next batch of cheese, and then we're going to make our dressing for our potato salad. Add this in, mix it up, and we'll let it start to melt for it. But again, do your cheese in batches, don't throw it all at one time. And then just make sure to kind of continuously stir it as it kind of melts here. So much for that spatula. Okay. Let's get our potatoes. Perfect. We got this nice kind of crispy edges on our potatoes. I'm going to turn it down to nice and low. Keep it hot while we're working on it. I'm going to flip up my Brussels sprouts here. And now we're going to make this we're going to cut up our red onion, our green onions, and make a little dressing to toss the potato salad in. So this is a hot German potato salad, which is different than, you know, your traditional American-based potato salads that are smothered in mayo. This doesn't have any mayo in it. It's just kind of a sweet, tangy dressing over it that has a little bit of mustard and vinegar, sugar, and some paprika, garlic, salt, onion powder. But we're gonna add our red onions, and you add raw red onions, you don't cook them up because they're gonna add this fresh onion flavor, this nice crunch, which kind of goes really well with the tanginess of the vinegar. There we go. We've got that. And then I have a couple green onions as well. We're gonna kind of cut off the white part at the bottom. And we'll toss these in there, and then we make our lovely dressing because we're down to the last few minutes. There we go. You could also, instead of using both green onions and red onions, you could use just red onions and parsley as well. I love the double onion kind of kick to it because I think it just is wonderful. Let me grab my soft butter over here because we're going to rub our our pretzels with butter and sprinkle the salt over them. You want to rub them with butter while they're nice and warm for it.
Oh, you have a question? Do you ever cook with kimchi?
You know, I've used it a couple of times. I was actually just talking with my husband about doing some more like Korean dishes and whatnot, kind of bringing in those flavors because I do a lot of like different types of Asian ones, but I haven't really done a lot of Korean. And I love kimchi. I feel like it adds a lot of great flavor. So it's something I'm like, I want to kind of start exploring some more. I actually just signed up for some Universal Yum boxes, which is something I had done a couple years ago with our family, and we would do these themed dinner party nights where I would cook a meal from that country, like a full, like 5-course meal from that country, and then we'd have my whole family there and we'd test the boxes. So I think we're supposed to get our first box tomorrow, but we're gonna do that. But South Korea is one of the boxes on there, so I'll probably have to definitely do something like that. We're gonna sprinkle, I rubbed them with some room temperature butter, and then we're gonna sprinkle our pretzel salt over this. You've gotta use pretzel salt. You can't use regular salt. Pretzel salt is not as salty as regular salt, which makes it perfect for the pretzels. Regular salt will it's too salty. So I got mine on Amazon, so you can just pick it up there. It's really easy, but it does make a big difference because it's been like watered, like diluted and then re-dehydrated for it. Let's get this nice and mixed in. Look how just delicious this beer cheese looks. How thick and cheesy it is. Beautiful. Let it continue to melt. And let's make our little dressing now. Let me grab a bowl. I need a small one. And then we'll toss it off because I think everything should be just about ready then. We'll give our onions and our sausages a little stir here. Here we go. Beautiful. I can see my Brussels sprouts are starting to get those kind of crispy edges on them, which is again why I didn't put a lid on it, because I didn't want them to get too kind of crispy. So let me put my green onions and my red onions in here. And now for our dressing, we're going to do about a tablespoon of like a cider vinegar. You want kind of a sweeter vinegar, so you could use like a red wine vinegar or whatnot. But you don't want it to be, too tart. So I've got about a tablespoon in here. We're going to put in about, I want to say, a tablespoon or so of sugar, kind of mellow out that flavor.
You had a crown from Jenny.
Thank you. And then we're going to use garlic salt, onion powder, and yes. We're going to put in about a teaspoon or so of mustard. You don't need a lot, but it really brings the nice flavors on. We're going to want about half a tablespoon of onion powder. And then about a teaspoon of garlic salt. We don't need too much because the bacon is already going to add a nice flavor, nice salty flavor to it.
You have a question? Could you use regular mustard?
You can use regular mustard, but it's got a different flavor profile. So a Dijon or a CD mustard is going to be better, but always in a pinch you can use it. Here we go. So we're just kind of mixing it up until it's all kind of dissolved. And you've got you don't have very much of this dressing, but you don't need a lot to add this flavor. And you're gonna mix it into our potato salad here. So this is a hot German potato salad. And we're gonna toss it with our fresh red onions and our green onions on here with our fried potatoes, our bacon fried potatoes. Now this can be eaten hot or cold. So you could eat it the next day cold and it is wonderful because you've got that tang, but it's amazing hot.
You have a question? How was the soup at lunch?
Oh, it was delicious. I will say, Torrin came down, he ate a whole bowl of it. He actually stole my little bowl first. He just came and took it right off my plate.
And then a follow-up question, do you have a cookbook?
I don't have a cookbook, but I'm in the process of making one because everybody's been asking for it. But I do post, for my members, I post recipe cards every week. We do, a couple a week. about over the recipes we've cooked over the week. And I upload all of my videos onto the link on my page so that everybody can always watch and recreate my recipes if they want to. And then for those who want to join for the membership, you can get recipe cards every week. But that's kind of my goal for 2026, because realistically it's not going to happen this year, is to get a cookbook in the works. Okay, we are just about done here. I'm going to toss my Brussels sprouts. We're just going to season these up with just a little bit of garlic salt on there, but they have some nice crispy edges from our frying them up in the bacon. And we will be ready to serve up here because our sausages are nice and done. And remember, our sausages were already pre-cooked, so really the goal here is to get them nice and kind of browned on the sides, so they're nice and heated up through on there. But let's serve up our dinner. So I'm gonna just turn this guy off and get these all turned off. And then for my beer cheese, I'm going to leave it on the lowest of the low setting, because just like any cheese dip, if you take it away, it's gonna, congeal up and get thick. You wanna keep it nice and warm. Okay.
And you have a question, can you go over the different sausages?
Yes. So let me grab a little bowl here for my little beer cheese. But we have, there's a Weisswurst, which I won't know until I dig into them. One of the white ones is a Weisswurst, the other one is a bratwurst, and then we have a Knockwurst, which is kind of like a hot dog on there. But these are going to be delicious and fun on there. I got them from Costco, so it's kind of, they have it in their little Oktoberfest. Okay, let me put our plate over here, and then I'm gonna get get a pretzel over here to kind of work with for this. Let's get a pretty one. And get everything ready to serve up. Okay, for dinner today, we have our soft pretzels that we're going to dip in our ooey gooey and delicious beer cheese dip that we made with cheddar cheese and Gouda, added a little bit of liquid smoke and some lovely spices. We have our sauteed bacon and Brussels sprouts, which just add a nice little hearty vegetable. And then a nice tangy twist is a hot German potato salad, which is filled with bacon, fried potatoes, red onions, green onions. It has a tangy vinaigrette. And then, of course, let's not forget, we've got our sausage trio here, our Knockwurst, Weisswurst, and Bratwurst, and with a little bit of caramelized onions to go on top for our own little German fest here. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page, so if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes at home, you can just go to that link, search for what we made, and you can watch and cook along with us again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets. I've got my 6-quart saute pan, my hex pad, my Dutch ovens, knives, cutting boards, all the different things that I use in the kitchen. I have in there in case you're interested in what we use. But again, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe.